This conference will now be recorded.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Leila Hernandez with American University School of Communication, and welcome to another episode of Faces of SOC. Before we get into the presentation, I would like to go over some introductory information to get everyone acclimated with the platform that we're using. This webinar is automatically muted, so your interface with me will be the chat box. My first question is, can everyone hear me? If you can hear me, please type yes in the chat box. And I'm going to type the question in case people can't hear me. Can you hear me? Yes or no? Ah, excellent. I love it when the yeses start coming in. All right. Okay, well, there's no no's, so I'll just keep going. So feel free to type your questions there throughout the presentation, and we'll answer them during the Q&A session. Again, my name is Leila. Not only do I work in the School of Communication, or SOC for short, but I'm also an alum. I received my master's degree from SOC in 2010, so I'm happy to speak to you both as a staff member and as a proud alum. Today, we will be joined by fellow SOC alum, Kristian Hernandez. Kristian graduated from the MA in Journalism and Public Affairs in 2018, and he is the recipient of the AU Pulitzer Center Fellowship. As a graduate student, Kristian was also a fellow with the Center for Public Integrity, and he participated in the Washington Post practicum. So today I will be asking Kristian about his time as a graduate student at SOC, and we'll find out what he's doing now. And you, the participants, are also welcome to ask Kristian about his experiences. Simply type your questions there in the chat box, and we'll answer them at the end. And hello, Kristian. Your timing is perfect. Welcome to our webinar. How are you today?
Doing all right. How about you? Well, let me try to figure out this thing because it's got me on speaker.
You've definitely got it figured out.
Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you perfectly. Yes.
Okay, good.
So, welcome. Thank you so much for joining today. And I thought I would start off by just asking you some questions. And then if our participants have any questions, they're welcome to type them too. So I say we jump into it, if that's okay with you.
That works.
Wonderful. So let's go back in time a bit. Tell me about your life before coming to grad school at American University. Where did you get your bachelor's degree, and where did you work before you even thought about coming to grad school at SOC?
Okay, so I got my bachelor's at the University of Texas at El Paso, which is El Paso is my hometown, and I studied multimedia journalism. I was part of this this new thing they were trying out. I was the first one to graduate. I was part of the first class to graduate with that major. So they were trying to mix basically online, what we call today is online journalism, and they were mixing a lot of being able to shoot video, to record audio, but not really like radio quality or broadcast quality stuff, more like additives to your print story. So there was still a major focus in print, and we were learning how to do layout. We ran a publication called Border Zine, which we kind of partnered with a bunch of universities all across the border, on both sides of the border, and we did these big projects where we would request data. While I was there, we did this thing called Mexodus, where we looked at like over 200,000 people that had left northern Mexico because of the drug violence. So as part of that project, learned a lot, and it sort of set me up for covering immigration. It took me a while. I didn't do any internships with immigration. I did about 4 internships while I was in school. And then my first job, I came here to DC and I covered the courts. And then it's hard to make it in DC. It's expensive. So I went back to Texas and then kind of started where I left off, covering immigration for the McAllen newspaper. And I worked there for about 3 years and then sort of quit. Not sort of quit. I definitely quit. They stopped letting me go to Mexico, and we were in the middle of a crisis. I mean, we had the highest numbers of deaths, immigrant deaths. We had the highest number of unaccompanied children, family units being separated. We were covering this, and from one day to the next, the publisher said no one can go to Mexico anymore. It's too dangerous, and I don't want to risk it. And at the time, I mean, most of the people that were working there, we grew up on the border. I grew up in Mexico in Ciudad Juarez, so we knew how to navigate it. We knew the danger that was involved with our job, but I felt like they were sort of tying my hands, and I decided to quit and start freelancing. So about 6 months before going to AU, I was a freelancer. I was trying to build my own brand. I was selling stories. I mean, everything from a movie review to covering conferences, covering seminars, doing my own, feature pieces. I was trying to sell them to all the places I had worked in, and also trying to pitch stuff to international media. So BBC, Al Jazeera, I worked with them. I worked with the Post on a couple of pieces, but mostly as a fixer or a freelancer. And then I got a call from AU, and they're like, "You want to come here?" I think it was like in July. They're like, "You want to come? You want to do this?" Because I had applied for this fellowship through the Center for Public Integrity. And they called me up and said, "If you want to do this, you got to be here in 3 weeks." So I kind of just like packed everything and put it in storage, and then came to DC. That's where I was. That's the journey that got me to the university.
That is incredible. So the Center for Public Integrity, did you know about this organization before? How did you even hear about it? Because that seems to be a big draw to what brought you to AU.
So I think I had known about CPI through the International Consortium for Investigative Journalists, which was based here in CPI. They had just won a Pulitzer for the Panama Papers, and I knew about them because of that project that was a subset of what CPI had started. And also Chuck Lewis, who's one of the professors there at AU, started and continues to be a part of. Here he's a member of our board, and I think with ICAJ as well. And so it's sort of like this is the, let's say CPI, I always think of it this way, like CPI is the older brother or sister, and ICIJ is the younger brother, more tech savvy brother of I think of Chuck Lewis, who is the founder of both of these organizations and a professor there at AU. And I'd heard of him. I've also heard of Chuck. I'd seen, some of his work in Frontline. So I was aware of who Chuck was, and I was aware of what CPI and ICIJ was. So I was really excited to apply. Honestly, did not think I had a shot, and I was doing my own thing. And when they called me, I was very surprised, and it was to me a once in a lifetime opportunity. So I had to take it. I didn't really have a choice. I think it was I said yes from that moment. I was like, yeah, whatever it takes, I'll be there in 3 weeks.
That's incredible. How did you balance being a full-time journalism student and being a fellow for the Center of Public Integrity. And then you did the Washington Post practicum one of the semesters you were here as well. How does a student balance all of that? Because just one of those things is a hefty, like more than a full-time job. How did you balance all of them at once?
I was lucky to have an editor here at the Center for Public Integrity who always had my back. So they allowed me to change my schedule around my classes and also the practicum. So they were aware of the work I was doing, not exactly what stories I was working in, but they were aware of the hours that I was putting into the post. And then here I was working part-time. So I was doing 20 hours at CPI, which, I mean, obviously when you're a fellow and you come into an organization with people that have, decades of experience ahead of you, then you don't just work 20 hours. You're trying to play catch up a lot of times and trying to figure things out. So I definitely put in about 40-hour weeks, work either here at the office or most of the time, working from home or just reading books or reports, like on the bus or whenever I had free time. So I was definitely working full time, and then school was full time, another 40 hours. The practicum was something that I would say maybe put in about 12 to 15 hours. And it was a lot of scheduling. It was a lot of sacrifice too. I feel like I'd never had to schedule my sleeping until I did this, because I was working and I felt like I was the most productive between 11 and 5 in the morning. So I would get home from school around 11 and I would eat some dinner, and then I would shower, take a nap, get up, drink some coffee. And it was between, 3 in the morning, 5, 6 or 7 a.m. that I was getting, I think, most of my work done, and then I would come to the office, and then I would go, to school. I would get out of work maybe around 2 in the afternoon, and then I would sleep a couple of hours and then go to school. And it was definitely planning around my sleep. I didn't get more than, I would say, 5 or 6 hours of sleep every day. And also, making sure that I ate well. I think that was something that I didn't really that I forget to do. I didn't really prioritize too well. And I think the first semester was kind of rough on that sense. My mom started mailing me tamales from Texas because it's like the fattiest thing that we have in our cuisine. And it's also perfectly wrapped and like convenient to take anywhere. So like I had to cover, for example, something in the Capitol, and I am eating a tamal in the back of the room, and there's some reporter from Politico next to me, and she's like, did you just bring tamales into the hearing? I'm like, yeah, I'm hungry. I gotta eat. I gotta go to class right now, and I don't have time. I gotta write this thing up. So I'm like sitting in the back eating a tamal, and it was you had to get a little creative. Sometimes you had to sneak in a lot of things, overlap a lot of stuff. I think I was lucky though to have professors that understood what I was trying to accomplish. I was clear with them, this is what I'm trying to do and make the best of this opportunity. And I think they all had my back. And also here at work, I had editors who understood and had my back as well. So I think I was really lucky. It was a lot of juggling. It was a lot of playing catch up. Every time you'd finish one assignment, it meant that I was behind on 2 or 3 other things. So I had to play a lot of catch up. My sister, who moved in with me the second semester, she was from El Paso, so she came over, and she's still living here. So she moved out her place and came out here. She said when she showed up that that I had turned into a vampire. So it was a bit of a vampire life, I would say, if I recall looking back now. But it was worth it. It was 1 year, and you had to go all in or go home, right?
Yeah. No, that's excellent. And your case was unique because you were selected to be the CPI fellow, as well as being a full-time journalism and public affairs student. And not everyone, has to juggle those two things at once. But I think our faculty do want students to know that a journalism degree is, it's not a 9 to 5 job. It really is hard work. And I think your example, even though it is extreme, I think it does show that, this is hard work, but if you love it, if this is the field that you are passionate about, then you're in the right place.
Yeah, they definitely understand that, and I think they also understood that I was coming in with this, about 6 years of experience, and they made sure to make things honestly harder in some cases, because they had higher expectations. They were sometimes throwing curveballs at me, where I'd show up after covering the Supreme Court, and my professor Amy Eisman would, because we were working on deadline writing, so I had about 2 hours to write a story after going to the Supreme Court, and I had to turn it in. My deadline was in 2 hours, so we couldn't work remotely. We had to go back to the newsroom. So we'd sit there with her and explain our pitch. This is our angle. This is what I'm planning to do. These are the interviews that I have. And then she'd say something like, all right, but write it as if you were writing it for Time magazine. So write it in not just in the format, but in the voice of another publication. And in that, so that meant that you had to go and understand how these publications were writing in their style, so that you could adapt your story to them. And it was, you're talking about reporters, your professors are reporters that know this like by heart already. So you can't try to play it off. And they were grading us, I think, at a level where we were supposed to be. We are putting out work that is at the professional level, things that can be published as soon as, like, not just assignments, but things that would be published, that could be published. And I think that was very valuable.
Yeah, I agree. Our faculty don't see our master's students as just students. You're not a student journalist, you're a journalist. So that is nice that they see you as colleagues and they challenge you as such.
Yeah.
All right. So you've mentioned a couple, but tell me about specifically a memorable class or a memorable professor from your master's program.
So Amy, I think I still have like recurring nightmares about Amy throwing these curveballs at me. So Amy is definitely one of the professors who I'll remember. And also Professor Bill Gentile, I met him in my second semester and took 2 classes with him, which was foreign correspondence, and another class which I think was very unique, and I think was my favorite class throughout the year. It was backpack documentary, and he's pretty much got this trademarked. He is the person who created this style of journalism called backpack journalism. So it's about you going out on the field and being able to produce multimedia pieces with audio, video, photos, print, but with just everything has to fit in your backpack. So he was teaching this class in Spanish, and it's, I think, the second time that they ever did that. But he's got a book out that he wrote about this subject, and it's in Spanish as well. So he has it in English and in Spanish. So he's also one of the ones that launched the NHJ at AU, and he's really pushing for diversity in the newsroom, and he had the opportunity when I was there to teach this class in Spanish, and it was like 6 of us, I think, at the beginning, but we were turning everything in Spanish. Like the class was in Spanish, the book was in Spanish. We couldn't speak English in the class. It was also, so you had to be proficient, not just being able to understand it and speak it, but write it and work in the language. So to me, it was challenging. I mean, Spanish is my first language, but I didn't study like bilingual journalism. I studied it in English. So to me, it was challenging, both the language and also learning a new storytelling language as well, which was visual language. And he taught us that. And there were 6 of us at the beginning of the class. By the end of the class, there were 2 of us. So it turned into an independent study. And he would go out in the field with us and shoot. Like we were using these 4K Sony cameras. It cost maybe like $6,000, I think, that you have. So we were using like legit cameras to go out. We had all the equipment that we needed, and we were using, this equipment. He was teaching us how to use it, but in the field, he's sitting there with you and he's telling you like, all right, well, you got to, check your white balance and look at it this way. This is the best way to angle. This is the best way to shoot. And he would look at the footage that you would shoot like there on the field. Like me and him went to a naturalization ceremony.
Oh, wow.
Virginia. And we had to shoot this, but like we're shooting it on the field, and this only happens once a month. So I only had 1 shot, and this was the first shoot that I had to do. So, I mean, we had done some practice ones, but this was the first real shoot I had to go to. So he was there looking at my footage in real time and making sure that we captured it. And it turns out we didn't use a lot of that footage in the end of the final cut, but it was still a really great experience. And I think, him on a Saturday morning going out with me, spending, 4 hours in Virginia outside of the city to shoot this was I think it just showcased the level of commitment that these professors have for us here at AU.
Bill Gentile is absolutely the example of, superstar in his field of, a 40-year career being a freelance journalist. And now, the way he just gives his life to his students happily, he really is an amazing example. And that backpack journalism in Espanol, that was like one of the favorite classes he ever taught. That was really epic. That was the first Spanish language class ever taught at the School of Communication. So, and then, he started the National Association of Hispanic Journalists, the AU student chapter. So diversifying our newsrooms and giving opportunities to a wide variety of journalists that's Bill Gentile all over.
Yeah, no. So he's definitely memorable, and I think has become a mentor of mine, and I really enjoy, the time that we've gotten to spend together, and I think also the projects that we've been able to develop. So we helped launch the NHJ chapter, but also through his foreign correspondence class, I applied for the Pulitzer Center grant, and he's been a part of the grant and my journey reporting this, the entire way. While I was in Guatemala, for example, I had a emergency contact list, and he was on that list, and he would check in on me, make sure I was still alive. I hadn't gotten kidnapped or killed or something out there. He was there the entire way, and I think it's valuable to have that kind of, I think, resource when you're going out for the first time to report in a foreign country. To have someone that's got 40 years experience doing that's invaluable. Like also someone 40 years experience checking in on you and helping you along the way. I think that's that was you can't I don't think you can have higher expectations than that, from the staff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely want to ask you more about your Pulitzer Center Fellowship, but I want to get to Robert's question. One of our participants typed a question, and he wanted to know, what were some other memorable pieces of knowledge you received from those in the MA program and at CPI with their decades of experience? What were some nuggets that you got from them?
Okay, so I was in the investigative track, and there was international investigative reporting class with Chuck Lewis, and this was, to me, I mean, you're talking about someone that started 2 Pulitzer winning publications, and he's sitting there and at this table with you, but he's basically Skyping in or bringing in all of his, friends from, doing this for 40 something years. And he's telling you all of these stories, all of the background on the stories that have been published here, and these huge reports that have, like, I don't know, they've changed the way, for example, money and politics and transparency and all of this stuff is being reported at the federal and the state level. They've had a huge impact, I think, in this field of nonprofit journalism. And you're sitting there, you're listening not just to, these people directly that have won these Pulitzers working alongside him, but you're learning how they did it, and you get to ask them whatever you want. And I think that access that you have, I mean, it's up to you what you make out of it. I remember that there were a few of my like people that were in the same class with me in the same cohort that thought of it as, like, they called it story time with Chuck because they didn't feel like we were having a class, but I felt like this was more valuable than the readings. This was more valuable to me than, getting an assignment and getting graded on something. Like, sitting there and being able to ask questions and to have access to these people were things that, I didn't expect, first of all, and I thought were very valuable. So learning firsthand how reporting is being done at that level. And then I think another very valuable skill set that I learned while I was there was data. I've been doing print and had very limited knowledge to how to clean data sets, but you're talking about massive data sets. And taking a class there, data journalism, with Jennifer LaFleur, who also, Pulitzer Prize winning team in the Houston Chronicle, and with Reveal. She's got, she's one of the founders of NICAR, and the, level of expertise that she has, and also commitment, I think, to her students was great. We learned everything. I mean, in one semester, we learned from, how to create pivot tables on Excel, to running queries after you have cleaned and merged like 7 databases, so that you could look for trends and do like predictive analysis, which is like, that's her cup of tea right there. That's what she does and what she's been doing for a living, for her entire career. So we're learning from the best, and also it was just incredible. The reason I got hired, I think, here at CPI is because I was applying all of those skills directly to my reporting, like, every single day. So here they were short on data. The data team was short, and they didn't have enough time to like, I mean, also I was an intern or a fellow. I mean, the data team wasn't going to spend their resources on me. So it helped me to be able to do my own data here, and not only report stories at a national level, but break things, like, I was able to do things that even I cover state politics here, even our own state politics team wasn't able to do so. It was thanks to the skills I was learning there and applying them directly into my job. So yeah, it's skills, things that you'll be able to use that will even in newsrooms like the one I'm in right now, will make you stand out.
I'm really glad you mentioned our data journalist in residence, Professor Jennifer LaFleur. Students rave about her. And I'm actually going to do a webinar with her on Friday about what is data journalism and how to be a data journalist. So for anyone who's participating in this webinar, please do join me Friday at noon for a webinar with Jennifer LaFleur. But I'm definitely excited to get to know her. I haven't sat down one-on-one to pick her brain, but everyone I know who's had a class with her is her biggest champion.
Yeah. So we were her first class. I think we had like class from 9 to like 11 or something like that, or
Nice.
8 to 11 with her. And it was rough. It was rough, like a Monday night, like 8 to 11. But we were kind of her guinea pigs, and I think, yeah, we learned so much. We accomplished a lot. It was great.
Awesome. So now, tell me about the AU Pulitzer Center International Reporting Student Fellowship. How did you hear about the application? When did you apply? And what was the work? And then what did you do with this fellowship?
So the Pulitzer Center offers, they have a campus consortium, so they offer fellowships. I think it's something like 18 different universities participate, and every year they pick a student from each one of these universities to give them $2,500 to $3,000 to report a story. Most of them overseas. They definitely have to be talking about international, affairs, and then it has to have a focus on crisis. So you have to be exposing a crisis that is underreported. So I was able to take my experience working on the border and write up a pitch about migrant deaths. And it wasn't exactly what I did for my foreign correspondence class, but I think while I was with Bill in the foreign correspondence class, we talked to a lot of freelance reporters, working in Mexico, working in Central America, covering wars, both reporters and editors that work with freelancers. So I think all of that helped to make the pitch better over the year. I think we applied in April, and by that time I had spoken to different reporters that had worked in El Salvador. So my pitch was to go to Guatemala, and yeah, I used the experience that I got from that class to be able to perfect this pitch. And then, yeah, there was only one in the whole school, and it's not just the School of Communication. This is open to everyone. So if you look at the past recipients, most of the recipients have worked in film, because, I mean, you're talking about Pulitzer Center pays $3,000, and then you have film students who are doing documentaries, like full-length documentaries. Like that's a good bargain for their money. So I feel like they've gotten, really good deals when it comes to AU film students. But I think I was the first one from the School of Communications, or no, the second one from the School of Communications to get that grant. I think the other two had done broadcasts, so I think I'm the first one in the investigative track. Yeah, so it was really cool. They chose my story, I think mostly because it was something that we're talking about immigration right now, and it's so divisive, but I think talking about migrants who die and what happens to their bodies, and how the systems to repatriate, to both search, identify, and repatriate them back to their families has been failing. And there's so many cogs in this system, and how it's been stuck and bound by this bureaucratic red tape. So that was my focus, and I think it caught their eye. And I went to Guatemala. I spent 2 months there. I wrote up the story. I took sort of a health angle on it, and I'm working with Kaiser Health News to publish it, selling it to them as a freelance piece. So That's the cool thing. You have rights over your stories, even though the Pulitzer Center's giving you this grant. This is still your story, and you could still sell it to whoever you want and make money off of it. So I took what, 10 weeks off, yeah, from work to go do this, and then came right back to work. But I'm still working on a couple of pieces that trying to derive from my reporting down there, and all of them about immigration. So it was a great opportunity. And it was my first time going to Central America, even though I'd been covering immigration for a long time. And I think to me it was vital to go see it firsthand and understand the push factors from the people that are leaving. So, and in their homes, not once they've gotten here, so that was, to me, very valuable, and has definitely made me a better reporter.
So essentially, Bill Gentile's class, the foreign correspondence class, essentially prepares its students to apply for this Pulitzer Fellowship.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. And when you say here at work, I think you're talking about the Center for Public Integrity. When did you go from being their fellow to actually being hired as a full-time employee?
So, I don't know. So, I was originally planning to leave DC and go continue my freelance work. And I think I kind of fell in love with this place and understood that investigative journalism, even though I was taught this at school, I needed to practice it. And this was one of the few places where I could strictly do that. I don't have to cover daily news. I don't have quotas for how many stories I got to put out or deliverables. They're allowing me to investigate things that I feel are important, and they allow me the time and the resources to do it. So I think it was like 2 weeks before, in October, before my fellowship ended. Well, no, the fellowship actually ended in August, and they extended it till October.
Huh.
So then a few weeks before it ended, I applied for a job with the competition, which is State Line from Pew Research Center, and I got a job offer from them. So then I came back to CPI and I told them that I was interested in staying, and that I had gotten a job offer, and so they gave me a counter offer, and I stayed here. That's how that worked out. It was sort of last minute. It was kind of like, I don't know, you gotta sometimes, to get jobs out here, you gotta play your cards right. So that's also something that, I don't know, I spoke to some of my professors there at AU and told them what the game plan was and how I planned to execute it. And thank God it worked. But it was kind of, it was kind of a gamble, I think, in a sense.
Well, it was a gamble, but also if they know that they can count on you as a reliable, good journalist who has these data skills, who has all of these skills, like, employers will remember that, and that is absolutely vital. So you also proved yourself. It wasn't just, luck and playing the game right. You proved that you could do the job.
Yeah. And I think it's also important to have, people that have done this before, that have the knowledge and expertise and knowing how to navigate a newsroom and how to land jobs and how to apply, how to present yourself. And I think that was also something that I was able to rely on with some of my professors. And even though it was last minute, even though I was changing my mind at the end and saying I'm going to stay, being able to pull that off in a couple of months and land a job here, and at the same time tell them I want you to give me a job, but I'm going to leave for 2 months.
Right, because you're going to go to Guatemala.
And for them to agree to do that. So I don't know how it worked out, but it worked out, and yeah, it was really cool to come back now as staff and have benefits and have, vacation time, actually get paid a living wage. So I think that was, yeah, it's been good. I've been here since I came back January 14th. So I've been here for about 2 months.
Excellent. I want to let participants know that they are welcome to ask you any questions about your experiences before joining SOC as a grad student, or your experiences while you were a student, and what you've done since then. They're welcome to type their questions in the chat box. And if people are typing questions, while they're typing questions, I have one more question for you, Kristian. What advice do you have for newly admitted students or students who will be starting the Journalism and Public Affairs program, or any of our grad programs here at SOC this August? What advice do you wish someone had given you before you started grad school?
What advice would I think it was definitely the time management thing. It took me a while to figure it out. So having a game plan of how much you want to accomplish, and sitting down and actually doing the calculations of how much time you need to eat, to sleep, to do homework, to work, and considering your travel time and navigating the city as well is important. And honestly, like, I feel like a lot of the students that I was with, a lot of my cohort didn't take full advantage of the networking and resources that our professors have there. So I would definitely advise you to find someone that you relate to, and they're all so different that there's no doubt that you'll find a professor in the program, even if it's not a professor that you have in one of your classes, that can take you under their wing and for that 1 year help you navigate, because you're juggling so much that you do need someone to sometimes help you see outside the box, and to help you realize what resources there are both in the university and outside. So I would recommend that, yeah, you find someone. I mean, you have people like Professor Watson, who loves to play basketball.
Yeah.
Is more of like serious, very dedicated, and I saw him take a couple of people under his wing, and spend time outside of the class. I mean, Gentile, is more of he's really interested in Latin American affairs and diversity in the newsroom, definitely an advocate for all of that. And I really related to him for those reasons. But you got, Amy Eisman, who is also, for, women and equality. And I feel all of those things, came through, and also, you could see that there were people that were drawn to her for whatever reasons. She's, I would honestly go to her office sometimes just to eat candy, because she had great candy, and just to, like, update her on what I was doing. And it was great. I think, the conversations that we had outside the classroom and in those small, brief moments when I'd sit there in her office to bug her and eat her candy, were very valuable. And you want to make sure that you stand out. So do your best, even if you're burned out. Find ways to take care of yourself and show your best side, and be prepared for a very demanding and I don't know. I think it was, to me, it was kind of revolutionary, seeing how the industry has come so far and how much we need to know as journalists. No longer are you able to survive with just one skill set. You need to learn different things to be able to set yourself apart. So find out what you're good at, and then figure out, you know, what you want to focus on. But I would do that early on. I would take the workshop. I think we called it boot camp before the
Yep.
class. I would take
Starts
boot
with boot
camp
camp.
to figure out during boot camp what you want to focus on, and then run with it. And whether it's data, whether it's design, whether it's video or audio or investigative, all of those things are available to you. Doesn't even matter, like, if you're broadcast or investigative track, like, you have opportunities to learn all of those things, and you can do it, and you should find out, you know, also where you want to go after, and have that in mind so that you could start working towards it, and your professors will help you find a path.
That is excellent advice. Thanks, Kristian. We have one more question from a participant, Robert. He says, this is a great talk. I'm learning a lot. Are any of your Guatemala and immigration articles available online?
So the Pulitzer stuff isn't published yet. We're waiting for Kaiser, and I think they should be within the next month. But yeah, the stuff that I did for the Pulitzer Center, I had to take my time on it. It was a subject that was hard to cover. It's something that was sort of that was kind of personal to me as well. And I decided to, when I came back from Guatemala, to take a couple months off and then revisit it. Once I was a little bit more, I think, centered in both what the story that I had and what I wanted to do with it, and the best way to report it and the best publication to do so. So I took a couple of months off before I continued working on it, and I just turned in a draft a few weeks ago. So hopefully within, you know, a couple weeks, month, it should be published. But you can find some of my work that I've done on immigration at the Monitor, which is in McAllen, which is in the Rio Grande Valley, and, you know, ground zero for immigration right now. And I was working there for a couple years. And yeah, I mean, you could find some of my stuff too, for the Center for Public Integrity on their website. At the Post, the story that I worked on was the Murder with Impunity, and that was the unsolved homicide project that they put out last year. So I worked on that with them. But yeah, hit me up. Feel free to hit me up. You know, if there's anything I can help you all with, and you know, if you're interested in learning more about, you know, both the city and navigate it, or the school, or journalism in general, different topics, whatever you want, just hit me up. I'm available.
I just typed my email address, leela@american.edu. So Kristian, if it's okay, if any of those people, any of the participants email me and want to get in touch with you, can I pass your email address to them?
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. All right. So actually another question has come in, and I promised to let everyone go. Bridget asked, any advice on making the financials work? DC is an expensive city. How did you manage being a student/fellow and paying the bills?
So I took on about $12,000 in loans. The scholarship covered my whole tuition. So I was still, you know, even though I was working and getting paid, I got paid $30,000 from CPI, and then I had my full tuition covered. I still couldn't afford housing, you know, and I needed to live somewhere close to the university. So I took on loans, and honestly, yeah, I mean, I think I might have maxed out one of my credit cards, you know, just trying to make it through the year. But I think it was worth it, and it's rough, you know. There was a lot of think there was a lot of things I had to pass up on. You know, there's a lot of good concerts out here, and I think that was the hardest part for me to like pass up on some good shows. But it was just a year, and I think it was worth it. But you definitely gotta, I think, do the math. Journalism, especially here in DC, if you're doing the calculations, like if you're gonna get a job in a major city like DC or New York or LA, even, you know, capitals like Austin or Dallas and Texas, like you'll probably make enough money to live well. But in places like McAllen, for example, you're going to be earning at a daily newspaper somewhere around 30,000, 35,000 a year, starting off. So I think, yeah, it's important to get the financials and be realistic about how much you can make starting off. It's when I first graduated with my undergrad and I came here to DC, I had two part-time jobs and I still couldn't, you know, make rent. So it's really hard to make it out here, but it's because you're competing with people that have 20, 30, 40 years of experience. And I think being here is worth the money because it's an investment, because you're competing with them and you're working alongside all of these reporters, and it makes you a better reporter. And, you know, it just depends how much you're invested in this journalism thing. But like I think Leila mentioned, it's a lifestyle. It's journalism is a lifestyle. It's not a 9 to 5. This is a way of life, and I think you gotta be that devoted to know that is worth it.
I think that says it perfectly. Thank you, Kristian. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for being such a great ambassador for SOC and our journalism program. And thank you to all the participants who participated today. You guys asked some great questions. And please do email me for any follow-up questions, or I'd happily put you in touch with Kristian directly. And Kristian, thank you so much for coming today.
Yeah, no, thanks. And good luck, everyone. Hit me up, yeah, if you need anything.
Awesome. All right, guys, I hope you have a great day and take care.